Hey you guys, welcome back. Today we're going to go over simplifying fractions. Before we do that though, fact number 13 about me, I'm a big ice cream guy. I love pretty much any brand of ice cream, most any flavor too, but my favorite brand is this one right here. It's called Jeni's ice cream. That's Jenis. It was started by a woman named Jenny. So this is my favorite brand here lately, and they sell it in grocery stores now too. They have it in Publix and Whole Foods, and I think some others as well. But that's the only places I've really seen it. They have some storefronts as well. You can go to, there's 3 or 4 around here in Alpharetta. They're really good about sampling. They have a lot of cool flavors you're not going to find anywhere else. And my favorite flavor, and honestly, this actual pint right here is my favorite ice cream that I've ever had, like in my life. It's this flavor right here called Gooey Butter Cake. It is unbelievable. 10 out of 10. Can't recommend enough. Now, this brand's a little pricey, so I don't buy that often, but it's my favorite ice cream, and this flavor right here is my favorite ice cream I've ever had in my whole entire life. So you gotta try it. Let me know if you do. And also let me know if you love any other flavors, because I love pretty much all their flavors. So I love to talk about ice cream, and this one right here is definitely worth a try. So anyway, let's get back to the math. Simplifying fractions. Now, whenever we simplify fractions, let me get back on the pen. There we go. Now, whenever we simplify fractions, we are talking about trying to get that fraction into the smallest numbers possible. I have this 3 over 6 right here. I want to see if I can take that down and make those numbers even smaller to simplify it. Whenever we simplify fractions, we are looking for the greatest common factor, otherwise known as the GCF. All right? So whenever I'm looking at these, I want to go and find the GCF of the numerator and the denominator so that I can simplify this. So if I'm looking for the factors of 3 and the factors of 6, I'm going to go ahead and write them out. Now remember, factors are those small numbers that go into a number. So it's the numbers that are divisible by this. So I'm looking for all the numbers that are divisible by 3. The factors of 3 are 1 and 3. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Notice how I do them in pairs. 1 and 6, they multiply to give me 6. 2 and 3, they multiply to give me 6. 1 and 3 up here, they multiply to give me 3. I always do factors in pairs when I write them. That way I don't forget any. It's kind of hard if you try to write them 1, 2, 3, and 6. It's easy to forget some that way. So these are all the factors. The greatest common factor here would be 3. They both have 3. So I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by that GCF. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. And that is the furthest I can simplify that fraction. Now, I know I'm done simplifying when the only greatest common factor, let's say I wrote them out for 1 and wrote them out for 2. Factors of 1, there's only one, it's this one, just 1. Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. The greatest common factor here would be 1. But if I tried to use that to simplify this, I would divide both by 1. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. Look, I get the same thing. So if 1 is your only greatest common factor, then you're done simplifying. All right, you can't take it any further. Let's look at the next one. 5 and 15. Let me write out the factors of these two. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Factors of 15 are 1 and 15. And 3 and 5. Notice again how I'm writing them in pairs. That way I don't forget any. Greatest common factor here would be 5. I'm going to go up here and divide both the numerator and the denominator by 5. 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 15 divided by 5 gives me 3. And that's the furthest I can take that one. Let's look at the next one, 8 and 10. Let me go and look at the factors for 8 and the factors for 10. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8. Factors of 10 are 1 and 10. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot a couple. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8. Also 2 and 4. Factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and that's it. Greatest common factor here is 2. So I'll go and divide both of these by 2. So 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. That is the simplest form of that. Notice also that 8 over 10, the one that I started with, and 4 over 5, These are equivalent fractions. They're equivalent. They are equal to each other. This one over here is just the most simplified form. All right? Let's look at this one over here. Negative 2 over 6. Now, whenever I write factors, I'm going to ignore the negative because I'm really just looking at these numbers, the factors of 2 and 6. Because what if I tried to write the factors of negative 2? I would have negative 1 and negative 2. And then the factors of 6 would be 1 and 6, 2 and 3. There'd be no greatest common factor here because I have negatives. So whenever I think about this, I'm going to ignore the negative when I think about factors. And really, the negative only comes into play whenever I'm trying to simplify and get my final answer. I'll just bring the negative back and not forget about it. Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. I got a greatest common factor of 2. So I'll divide by 2, divide by 2. Now look, negative 2 divided by 2, that gives me negative 1. A negative divided by a positive gives me a negative answer. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. And that is the furthest I can take that one. Now, whenever we have a negative fraction, as long as there's only one negative sign, I can put it in the numerator, or I can put it in the denominator, or you could put it with the fraction bar. It is your call. If there's one negative, you can put it wherever you would like. You may also see it in any of these places on a test or on milestones, so it's important that you can recognize that it could be in any one of these places as long as there's only one. I always keep mine in the numerator though. That's my habit. That's how I learned it, and that's probably the most universal, consistent way of where to place the negative, but once again, you could see it in any of these places, okay? It's your call where you want to put it. Let's look at the next one, negative 9 over 15. Again, I ignore the negative whenever I'm writing these factors out. I'm just writing the factors of the numbers. So factors of 9 are 1 and 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm just actually going to write both of them. It's your call if you want to do that. It kind of helps me keep track that I'm not forgetting anything. All right? They're the same number, but it just kind of helps me keep track of things. Factors of 15 are 1 and 15. 3 and 5. And that is it. Greatest common factor here is the 3. They both have a 3. So I'm going to divide them both by 3. Negative 9 divided by 3 gives me negative 3. 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. And that's a simplified form of that one. Let's look at this one, negative 12 and 18. If I wrote the factors of 12, factors of 18, I'd have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. For the factors of 18, I'd have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, and that's it. So the greatest common factor they have is 6. So I'm going to go up here, divide both of these by 6. Negative 12 divided by 6. Let me draw an arrow so I have a little more room to write this fraction. Negative 12 divided by 6 gives me negative 2. 18 divided by 6 gives me 3. And there we are. There we go. Now let's scroll down. There we go. Yeah, let's do number 7. Perfect. All right, let's get back to the pen. Give this work an erase. Move this out of the way. There we go. Let's look at number 7. So number 7 says negative 5 over 15. Now, 5 and 15, let me write out the factors. 5, I got 1 and 5. 15, I got 1 and 15. 3 and 5. Greatest common factor is 5. So let me go divide them both by 5. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So I got negative 1/3. Now looking over here, 20 and 44. If you tried to write out all the factors, you might be here for a while. Instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and think of a factor they both have in common, and I may have to take this simplification process in steps. I may have to simplify once and then simplify again and maybe again, and that's just fine, all right? Because eventually you're not going to be writing down all the factors. Eventually you're going to be able to think about factors in your head, and sometimes you may not have the greatest common factor, but you probably have a factor they both have in common. It just might mean an extra step or two, but it's just fine, all right? This one, I'm not going to write out the factors because that would take a while. Instead, I'm just going to think, what goes into 20 and 44? Well, they're both even numbers. I know every even number has a factor of 2. Every even number in the world is divisible by 2. So I'll divide both by 2. Negative 20 divided by 2 gives me negative 10. 44 divided by 2 gives me 22. But hey, look, I have 2 even numbers again. I know I can take this down even further. I can do 2 again because they're both even. Negative 10 divided by 2 gives me negative 5. 22 divided by 2 gives me 11. And I can't take this one any further. That's as far as we can go. Look at the next one, 24 and 36. Again, I'm not going to write out all the factors of 24 and 36. That could take a while. Instead, I'm going to think, what goes into 24 and 36? Let's see. I know 6 goes into them both. Let me try 6. 24 divided by 6, or I'm sorry, negative 24 divided by 6 gives me negative 4. 36 divided by 6 gives me 6. Hey, they were both even again. I know that's not my final answer because I can actually simplify them both further because they're both even. That means they're both divisible by 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 gives me negative 2. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. And that's the most I can simplify that one. So the next one, 10 and negative 14. Oh, wait, let me go back to this. Hang on one second. If I really wrote out the factors, eventually I would find the greatest common factor is actually 12. If I really wrote, if I found that and wrote all the factors, I would do negative 24 divided by 12 gives me negative 2. 36 divided by 12 gives me 3. And look, I get the same answer either way. Okay, sometimes you have to do it in steps because you're trying to do it in your head, and that's cool. All right, eventually you're not going to write all the factors. You're just going to be trying to think about this. Okay, so the next one, 10 divided by negative 14. They're both even. I know they are both divisible by 2. Now look, the negative is in the denominator. As long as there's one negative, you can put it anywhere you would like, and you might see it any one of those places. Okay, 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. Negative 14 divided by 2 gives me negative 7. You can keep it like this if you want, or if you were me, I would probably just move the negative up to the numerator because that's where I always keep it. Either one is good. They're both the same. This one down here, 15 and negative 18, they're both divisible by, I think, 3. Let's see, 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. Negative 18 divided by 3 gives me negative 6. There we go. Or you could move that negative up to the numerator, which is always kind of what I'm going to do. This one over here, 6 divided by negative 30. Ignore this typo right there. Just ignore that. 6 divided by negative 30. So, I'm sorry, 6 over negative 30. They're both divisible by, I think, 6. Let's see. 6 divided by 6 gives me 1. Negative 30 divided by 6 gives me negative 5. There we go. Or, of course, feel free to move the negative to the numerator. As long as there's only one negative sign, you can put it wherever you'd like. This one down here, there's 2 negative signs. Now, this is where things get a little different. When I have one negative sign, I can put it anywhere that you want. It doesn't matter. When I have 2 negative signs, I have to remember that every fraction is technically a division problem. A negative divided by a negative is really a positive. So, whenever I have 2 negatives in here, I get rid of them both, and I end up with a positive fraction, 1 over 8. The reason I can put it anywhere in one of these is because 1 divided by negative 5 is still a negative answer. Negative 1 divided by 5 is still a negative answer. You get the same thing either way. Okay? However, this way, when I have 2 negatives, well, I know that a negative divided by a negative is really a positive. So this is what I'm looking for over here. Okay? Let's look at this one over here. Again, a negative in the numerator and in the denominator. Get rid of them both because a negative divided by a negative is just a positive. Now look, 5 over 10, they're both divisible by 5. That's their greatest common factor here, I believe. 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 10 divided by 5 gives me 2. And that's a simplified form of that one. All right, you guys, thank you for sticking around for the whole video. And I will see you guys in class.